All right, everybody. We are in the Week 12 recap of fantasy. Wild week for both real football and for fantasy football. Little Q word for some of us in this chat because the Jets were off, the Bills were off. The Jets obviously kept themselves in the news as per usual with some of their nonsense, all the reporting over the week of Rodgers this, Rodgers that, firing Joe Douglas, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where the Jets are at the moment. Bills, bye week. The bye week was the bye week. Nothing monumental. Would have been nice if Miami would have lost a game, but hopefully they lose on Thursday night. If Miami loses Thursday and the Bills win Sunday, the Bills will actually clinch the division by December 1st, which would be very nice. Obviously, we should win the division regardless. 4-game lead with 6 to go, but don't want to count our chickens before they hatch. Patriots looked terrible. Sorry, JJ. Dolphins, vice versa, looked very good. Congrats, Marissa. Giants, you guys are an S show at the moment. Being polite because we got some guests on the cast today, and Jameson too. Say hi, Jamo.
Hi, Jamo.
They had a obviously terrible PR week with the whole Daniel Jones fiasco, and then looked as bad as they could look against Tampa on Sunday. Some bad football. Wild Washington-Dallas game. That last 3 minutes was nuts. Wild ending to the Vikings-Bears game. That was pretty crazy. I feel like there was another crazy ending in there too. Tennessee, Houston. That was pretty wild as well. So interesting week of real football. Big week for some of us coming this next week. Let's talk about fantasy because we are getting down to the nitty gritty. Say nitty gritty.
Nitty gritty.
The nitty gritty. We are getting down to the nitty gritty in fantasy. It is week 12 is in the books. What are you doing, crazy? Week 12 is in the books, and we have 2 weeks left of the regular season. So let's do quick on the recap, and then more so let's talk about standings and playoff seeding because that's the stuff that's going to be really important here. So real quick, I came into this week totally expecting to take an L. I had basically chalked this game up as a loss before it was started. My team has been, put together with Band-Aids this whole season, and then coming into this week, no Joe Burrow, no Bijan Robinson, and for that matter, no Taysom Hill. So I came into this week fully expecting to take the L and then just hoping things would break my way the last 2 weeks of the season, and be part of that mix. Didn't expect to win at all. Very grateful that I got one against the first place team in Larry. Larry has won Player of the Week, won the $25 for highest performance twice, and he has now won the lowest performance twice. So I'm grateful for that. For him, Jordan Love played okay. The problem for him, Arizona defense was his number 2 scorer. Mike Evans didn't do a whole lot. Justin Jefferson didn't do a whole lot. DK didn't do a whole lot. So bailed out there. For me, I got huge games out of Trey McBride and Jacoby Myers. Larry had texted me during the day. He's like, this is ridiculous. You're beating me, and nobody on your team's even scoring a touchdown. Trey McBride doesn't score touchdowns, apparently. He's got one on a run this year, and then he's got one on he recovered a fumble in the end zone. But beast tight end, number 4 overall in scoring, and has done it without scoring any touchdowns. Yes, honey?
I call J-Mo Bailey.
You call J-Mo Bailey? I keep doing that all the time.
I call him Jameson.
You call him Jameson? Oh, that's good. That's his name. So for me, Schoonmaker, a guy I picked up off the waiver wire, Justice Hill, a guy I picked up off the waiver wire, all gave me, points in the teens, and somehow I piecemealed 119.76 points together. I mean, I started Tommy DeVito at quarterback in this league. But, hey, I'll take the W. We'll talk about what it means for the standings later. I'm 8-4. Larry falls to 9-3. Good news for you, Larry, though, and we'll talk about it later, is you clinched a playoff spot despite the loss this week, and you are the only person in the league to do that thus far. Moving on. Justin gets the win, 135 against Rob, 111. Rob needed this game to keep his playoff hopes alive. They're not dead officially, but they're basically dead at this point. For Justin, he's looking very likely to lock up a bye week in this league. We'll talk about the schedule a little bit coming up, but fortunately for Justin, he's the only one in the league who gets to draw Courtney twice in the schedule. So he'll play Courtney week 14, and so him being in second place at the moment, plus that matchup, he's looking very likely to get one of the two buys along with Larry. So for Justin, big game out of Josh Jacobs. His game's a little overshadowed by the Saquon Barkley game, but Jacobs had a monster game. Pollard had a good game. Nico Collins, if he didn't have the 2 touchdowns the last 2 weeks called back on penalties, he'd be the number 1 fantasy wide receiver since returning from injury. And even despite having those called back, he's still producing. For Rob, Aaron Jones had a nice game. Hurts was okay. And then Green Bay, when you see your defense popping up as one of your top scorers, that's usually not a good sign. So Keo gets the win, improves to 8-4, and Rob falls to 5-7. Speaking of 5-7, we've got Ken and JJ. JJ, very similar to me, is putting together his team with Band-Aids. Now he's starting to get healthy. He's got Cooper Kupp. He's got Christian McCaffrey, and but he held it together for a long time, and he's got himself firmly in the playoff mix right now. He gets the 125-95 win over Ken. I think Ken's on like a 6-game losing streak. Sorry, buddy. I mean, here's a wild one. JJ gets the win. His number 1 performer this week, Will Lutz, his kicker, 22 points. That's wild. Kittle got him 20. Kupp got him 20. For Ken, Nick Chubb had a 19-point game. Montgomery and Henry got 16-14. So his running backs got him some points, but apparently nobody else did. So unfortunately for Ken, he's kind of in the same boat as Rob. His playoff hopes are not officially dashed, but they're pretty much dashed at this point. The good news for you guys is that you will not get last place because that has actually been locked up at this point. Moving on, speaking of last place, we've got Zach versus Courtney here. If Courtney had pulled off the win here, there'd be a 1 game separating them with 2 to go for the last place finish. Fortunately for Zach, he doesn't have to worry about that. He gets the 130-100 win. Bucky Irving, JSN, Stafford had good games. For Courtney, big games out of Keenan Allen, Lamar Jackson, Andrews produced today, but not enough, and the bench points weren't there either. With that win, there's 3 games of separation between the 14th and the 13th place teams with 2 to go. So congratulations, Courtney. You have locked up the 2-4-6-8 challenge and the Sacco for all intents and purposes. So Zach improves to 4-8. Courtney falls to 1-11. Moving on, big game here for possible playoff matchups. Oh, you know what? I skipped Aaron and Marcel, but that was such a tightly contested game that we'll do that one last anyway. Yes, honey.
I have banana.
Yes, you can have a banana. So let's talk about Marissa and Kyle. That was a big game because Marissa had a chance to sneak in, and same with Rob and Ken. She's not officially dead at 5-7, but 6-6, she would have had a lot more hope. Yes, honey. Yes, you may have an apple. I like when they ask for bananas and apples as opposed to other things. So this was a huge game for Kyle. It puts him literally at the 6th seed right now with the win. With the loss, he would have been probably the 7 seed at the moment and a game back. So this was a huge game for seeding for Marissa. Like I said, it doesn't kill her, but it's pretty close to dead at this point. For Kyle, he's the high scorer this week. I feel bad for Marissa because she has second, third. Oh, poor Marissa. She's got the 3rd highest score of the week, and she's playing the highest score of the week. I mean, the only one who scored more than her was Richie. That's tough breaks, but that's fantasy, unfortunately. For Kyle, we've talked about a million times. If his running backs go off, he wins. And Saquon had 46, Achane had 20, and then McLaurin had 21, which, 8.6, 9.6, 15.6 of those 21 points were on that last play of regulation, essentially, which is crazy. So, I mean, that Hail Mary essentially won the game for Kyle. For Marissa, big games out of Sutton. Herbert was good. Lamb was fine. Unfortunately for Marissa, the bench points were there, and this is one of the few times where you'd say, I'd rather have Tennessee than Kansas City. She plays the Titans defense instead of the Chiefs defense. She wins the game. Unfortunately, the bench points were there. Now, is that a decision any of us would have made? I highly doubt any of us would have benched the Chiefs defense against the Panthers for the Titans defense against the Texans. But then be the break sometimes. So, sorry, Marissa. Kyle gets the win there. He improves to 7-5. Marissa falls to 5-7. Speaking of 5-7, we got 2 5-7 teams here. Richie, like I just mentioned, had the 2nd highest score of the week. Jordan Addison, beast mode game. Gibbs killing it. Puka had a good game. For Tommy, Mahomes finally produced, and 10th overall pick in the draft, DJ Moore produced, but unfortunately the rest of his team didn't really come through the way he needed it to be. 123 is not a bad add-in. Would have beat a lot of guys, but not Richie this week. Richie improves to 5-7. Tommy falls to 5-7. As we mentioned with Marissa, with Ken, with Rob, we got a lot of 5-7 teams. Mathematically, they are not dead yet, but it's going to be tough. It's essentially a 7-man race, potentially a 6-man race for 5 spots for the playoffs. Speaking of those 5 spots, 2 teams that are very much in those 5 spots are Aaron and Marcel. What a matchup. Literally came down to the Sunday night game, and Aaron gets the 128.5 win against Marcel 128.1. So 0.4 in this matchup. Jaden Daniels, we talked about that Terry McLaurin touchdown. Jaden Daniels produced for Aaron. That's 4 plus 8. That's, there's 7.5 points on that one throw right there at the end of regulation. Brian Robinson getting hurt obviously affected Marcel. I mean, you could look at a million things in those games when there's a 0.4 point difference in it. Obviously, there was some crucially bad bench decisions by Marcel there. He had Jalen Waddle go off on the bench. Somebody else is on his bench, too, that would have had the points, and he could have started him over a number of wide receivers that he started and got the win there. But brutal game for Marcel. Big game for Aaron. Aaron improves to 8-4. Marcel falls to 7-5. Right now, they are both playoff teams. Let's take a look at the standings and see where we'd be at if the season ended today and what everything looks like. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. Didn't even mean to go for a song lyric there. Last week we had one team officially eliminated in Courtney. This week we have 2 teams officially eliminated. Despite the win for Zach this week, he has been officially eliminated from playoff seeding. Courtney is at 1-11 in last place and secured last place. Zach is 4-8 and has secured a non-playoff season. Talked about all those 5-7 teams. We got Tommy at 12, Ken at 11, Rob at 10, Richie at 9, and Marissa at 8. All at 5-7. Playoff percentage points at this point. Tom still has a 1% chance to make it. Ken still has a 1% chance to make it. Rob and Richie have 3% chances to make it. And then Marissa has a 4% chance to make it. So, like I said, they're not dead, but it's going to be tough. Now, moving on to the most likely teams to make the playoffs. Let's go back to the top. Larry, despite the loss this week, Larry clinched a playoff spot. He has a 100% chance to make the playoffs. He is in. Yes, honey? He is 100% in. And it would be very unlikely, I think, at this point, for Larry not to get a bye week. Justin is really the only other threat, I think, to get a bye because of the point differential. I think Justin's like 14 points behind Larry. Let's see. 14 points behind Larry in total points. So even if Justin were to tie Larry over the next 2 weeks and, score more points than him, that still only drops Larry to the 2 seed. Larry on me and Aaron, the other two 8 and 4 teams, Larry's got like 132-point lead on me and like a 230-point lead on Aaron. So it's extremely unlikely. Larry would have to lose both games and me or Aaron would have to win both games, along with Justin winning at least one game. Girls, for him not to get a bye. So, not trying to jinx you, Larry. Obviously, I would love to sneak into a bye. But Larry, congratulations, secured a playoff spot, looking to become the first 3-time winner of the league, and is in officially in the playoffs, looking to get that bye. Justin, like I mentioned, also looking to get that bye. I didn't look ahead to see who he's playing next week, but Justin is playing Courtney. I looked ahead to see who gets Courtney twice, and it is Justin. So luckily for him, he's got a very good chance at locking up the 2 seed as well. And like I said, he's got a pretty healthy point lead on me and Aaron and the other two 8 and 4 teams to do that. Like I said, somehow I'm in 3rd place right now at 8 and 4. Justin, by the way, has a 98% chance of making the playoffs. So, not officially locked in, but pretty well locked in. Me at 8 and 4 somehow have a 94% chance to make the playoffs. Go ahead, go potty. Give me 1 second. You gotta wait till your sister's done. Go in the bathroom and wait for her. Potty breaks right in the middle of fantasy recaps. Can you believe this? So I have a 94% chance of making the playoffs. I don't feel like I have a 94% chance of making the playoffs, but whatever. Chase is on the case. Aaron, also at 8 and 4, has an 85% chance of making the playoffs. And now, at 5 right now, you got Marcel, 73% chance. At also 7 and 5, you got Kyle at a 70% chance. And then JJ, technically, if the season ended today, is not in the playoffs. JJ at 7 and 5 has a 70% chance of making the playoffs. So realistically, most likely it is Larry and Justin, both looking to become the first 3-time winners of the league, looking at the 2 buys there. And then you got me, Aaron, Marcel, Kyle, and JJ. You got 5 teams vying for 4 spots. So it's going to come down to the wire. Let's take a look at the schedule and see who everybody's playing this week. So week 13, I've got Richie. Richie, I will give you Kyle Pitts in one of the leagues if you just bench your whole lineup. So go ahead and do that now. And then big game, Justin versus JJ. That's huge for the playoff seeding. I'm just looking at it for me personally. A Justin win basically could clinch me a playoff spot because it would knock JJ down. It would keep him a game behind me with a game to go, even with a loss. It could essentially clinch me a playoff spot. Whereas a JJ win, if I could win, could essentially maybe get me into the bye. So I'm always conservative when it comes to these things. I just like to make the playoffs more than I'm worried about getting the bye. So I think I'm going for Justin in that game, but we'll see what happens. Courtney and Rob, unfortunately, that game really doesn't matter much for fantasy purposes. But for Rob, technically still alive, and I'm sure he wants to finish at 7-7, not have a losing record. For Aaron and Ken, big game for Aaron. Ken, obviously, same thing as Rob, still technically alive and definitely wants to try to finish 500. And then big game for Kyle against Zach. Zach is eliminated from the playoffs, but he could play spoiler against Kyle here and try to get a win, and which would definitely help out all of us vying for those playoff spots. Big game, Larry and Marcel. Marcel is right on the cusp of the playoffs with us other guys, and whereas Larry's looking to lock up that 1 seed, and then finally Tommy and Marissa, 2 teams fighting to stay alive and also try to aim for that 500 finish. So I mean, it's going to come right down to the wire. We'll see what happens. Let's go. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Hope everybody enjoys their day. And, go Bills.